everyone. This is Tama Miyashiro. I'm one of the assistant coaches on the women's national team, and I work primarily with our passers. And so let's talk about serve receive system. So basically, as a collective group, what are we trying to do to put ourselves in a really good position to side out? So I'm going to break down before the serve and during the serve. What are we trying to do? First, as passers, we need to front load the play as best as we can. In this case, the server, what's about to happen. And so if we have any special directions we need to do or adjustments, this is the time to do it. And usually, at least on our women's national team, the libero is in charge. They are our serve receive captain. And so if your coach is working with you and says, hey, you're in charge, that is what they're talking about. You have to help organize us, make sure we're standing in the right spots. And then we're talking about seam coverage. So what seam we're taking, and we're just trying to bring a lot of clarity before the serve even happens. And one thing you'll notice on the women's and the men's team is that before a serve, you'll often see high fives, eye contact, and a lot of pointing, describing what seams we're taking. And so that's just our signal to each other that we're in it together. And that is one thing that can make us really strong as a collective unit. And so when you're out there, make sure you're talking, making sure you're looking at your teammate in the eye, and that's going to eventually help to build a lot of trust. And at the highest levels, there are no small details, right? So watch our women's team, the team closest to us, get ready for the serve. High fives, eye contact, touch. And now we start to get ready to pass this really good serve. Okay, so we're just trying to get on the same page. That's part of front loading. Okay, let's talk about our passing target. So we are aiming to pass the ball in the middle of the court, 2 to 3 feet off the net. And that is good or perfect. Now, think of this idea where we want to keep our setters moving forward, okay? So that's why we aim in the middle. It's giving us and allowing us room for error in case the ball goes tight or a little right to the right or left. So we should still be okay to run our offense, okay? Now, as the serve gets tougher, you're going to aim a little further off the net, okay? So that blue dot moves off the net and it's a little bigger now, okay? We want to leave some room for us in case we're not as good or not perfect. Okay. And then, of course, if you're seeing a jump spin serve with a lot of pace, we can aim even further off the net. All right. And so you might have been taught a slightly different philosophy, but we really believe that this is going to allow our setter to run a good offense if the ball is passed in front of her. And we limit the amount of time she has to move back to set the ball. All right. Let's move on to what are some of the things we're looking for during the serve. So how are we moving? What seams do we have? How are we going to communicate? What's important for us as a group to execute so that we can have the most clarity possible and be on the same page? Okay, I'm going to go over typical breakdown of how we can cover seams. So note, this server is from 5. All right. And if you look, the passer closest to us, the passers in the red, right back, Justine. If you look at her red circles, that is the space that she is also covering, besides the serve that goes right to her. Okay. So in the space between her and number 14 in the white jersey, we're going to kind of think of the seam as splitting up between short and deep. All right. So we want to move assertively in that seam. And Michelle Barch, who is number 14, is in middle back. If the serve goes deep in that seam, she's going to try to cut it off. Okay, so technically we say deep seam, but we're trying to cut that ball off in the seam and not let the ball get too far deep. And if we look at our left back passer, Kim Hill, her responsibility is more like those green dots and obviously the serve right at her. Now, where things get a little complicated is when we want our middle back passer to help with the seam, because oftentimes that person or that passer in left back is a front row attacker. Okay, so You have to work out with your teammates what exactly those seams look like. But the biggest thing to remember is we want to cut off all the angles of the serve. And so if you're not quite clear on how to play the serves in that seam, or maybe you do something slightly different, just make sure you communicate it with your teammates and your coaches. Okay, but in general, this is what we try to do. All right, now we have slightly different setup because the server is now in 1 or 6. Okay, and so we just have flipped the responsibilities if you notice. Now, Kelsey, who's in left back, has the short right seam, and Megan in middle back, she has Kelsey's deep left. Okay, so we've essentially just mirror imaged the last slide. And on our team, we flip them because we believe that we need to cut off the angles of some of these really good serves. Okay, so this allows us to move at really efficient angles. And like I said earlier, you might have a different system that you play in. So the key is communicate well and allow yourself to move in a way that both passers can move at the same ball in the seam. All right. And so we look again, Megan, who's in middle back, her responsibilities are more the yellow circles. So deep left seam, short right. And Michelle Barch, who's in right back, she has those red circles and obviously the ball right at her. And so these are starting points. Okay. And so we all know if we've ever passed in a match or a practice that it's not super black and white as we think. Okay. So the important thing, we have to communicate beforehand and we try to plan as well as we can. But sometimes that's the best we can do. And once the serve actually comes over, there's just a lot of communication that needs to happen. And I want to throw one little tip at you guys. One thing we talk about a lot on our team is we want to call every single ball that comes over the net in or out and with the person's name. Okay, so that's a little challenge for you. As a passer, can you call every single ball in or out and the person's name? So now let's see some live action clips of how these seams work. So number 10, the passer in the middle is going to pass this ball. All right, so if you remember, server is in 1 or 6. Middle back has that short right seam. So she cuts off the serve in front of our right back and they move to the same ball, which is amazing. All right, here's another example from the other side of the court. Middle back player, Kelsey Robinson, is going to pass this ball. Okay, so again, servers in 1 and 6, she has deep left seam. And this is a really good serve. There you see Jordan and Kelsey talking about the seam. And she fights the serve up, and look where she passes the ball, in the middle of the court, nice and high. All right, look, I threw these 2 clips together. Look how they cut the serve off. Okay, so side view, trying not to let the serve get too far in the seam if we don't have to. And here's another clip from our men's national team. Our left back passer moves really well and is very assertive on the serve. And I know the Japanese server takes a little bit off, but as a front row passer, teams are going to do this to us. And so we have to be ready. We have to be able to manage the serve and run our offense after that. All right, athletes, a lot of information here. So here's your homework. Pick one thing that you learned from this session and write it down and go work on it at your next training session or your next match. Okay, is it something as simple as communicating, calling the ball in or out with a name? Is it communicating the seam so we know we're as clear as we can be when it comes to seam coverage? All right, and then another thing I want to leave you with. Let's strive to be really good for long periods of time. We don't need to be perfect as passers. We just need to be really good and remember that target. Can you aim 2 or 3 feet off the net, or is it a tough serve and you need to bring the pass off the net? Okay, have really good awareness there. And lastly, I wish you all the best on your journey to become a better passer and a better teammate in this setting, and good luck.